discussions instead of the word negotiations. And discussions just mean you discuss they want to make sure that you and the government have an understanding, a mutual understanding of what the requirements are. Because let's face it, there are a lot of great contractors out there, there are some shady contractors out there. So let's say, for example, I know exactly what you want in this statement of work. I know exactly what you want. But I know to provide this is going to be really, really expensive. And I want to beat out my competitors. So I want to bid a lower price. And so I'm going to interpret, instead of this big requirement, I'm going to interpret it like this. And then as contract starts going, my thought process is, you know, I'll just say to the government, hey, that's not what I thought it was going to be. Then they'll award me more money towards the contract as a change to the contract. And, you know, I'll win it because I came in at this lower price, but I'll make up what I lost over here. The government's trying to prevent you from doing that. They expect you, so during discussions, they want to make sure the two of you have a meeting of the minds as to what it is that you're doing. And they want to make sure you're not an unscrupulous contractor that's trying to get rid of something. And then the last thing they'll do is they'll do a call for final proposal revision. The new term is final proposal revision, FPR. You may have heard the term BAFO, best and final offer, BARFO, best and really final offer. So these are just your opportunity to revise your prices and submit your final offer to the government. But they'll make their award decision on it. And then after all that, they award and manage the contract. So they could do a single award, meaning only one company wins, or they could do a multiple award where multiple companies win. So the issue for the government is they have to state in their original RFP whether there's a chance for multiple awards. So most agencies will put in there the government reserves the right to do a multiple award because that protects them if they want to do a single award or a multiple award. So don't think you're going to be the only game in town if you win. They start up the contract by conducting a kickoff meeting where you get through all the logistics of things, and then you figure out how you're going to work on a day-to-day basis. And then the contracting officer representative gets involved, and they monitor, direct, and assess your performance during the contract period. You want to do a really good job on your government contracts because the government has a government-wide past performance system. So they will do an evaluation on you at the end, usually once a year, and that information from that review of you goes into the system that now everybody in the government has access to. So if you go after a contract with a different agency, they can go back and look at this stuff and see how well you performed. And then at the very end, they shut down the contract. There's different reasons for shutting down the contract. It could be the work's done, you know, the contract's over. It could be that you were terminated for default, which will impact your ability to get future government contracts, or it could be that you were terminated for the convenience of the government, like the example I gave earlier. So that's the government process in a 3.5-hour nutshell. What questions do you have? Going back 10 pages in his notebook.
On the 3 things that government must have, you said government's got to have a need, got to have a way to get to you, they got to have funds available. Could you clarify on what you mean on a way to get to you? Is that just having the SAM and your profile? What?
So, good question. So the government has certain thresholds. So they have like a micro purchase threshold, and they have a simplified acquisition threshold, and these numbers will change based on the agency. But it could be that they find out about you and they call you up and they say, I want to buy something and it's under $2,500, and they give you a credit card and you can sell it to them right there and then because you have the ability to take credit cards. Typically they don't buy one of something. They're buying multiples, so they can, if it's under the small acquisition threshold, then they can buy up into that amount from you, again, using a credit card. When you start getting into the small business stuff, they'll do set-aside programs where only certain types of small businesses can go after things. We keep dancing around the small business thing, but I want to present it in a logical fashion, but just know that that's an option. If you have a GSA schedule and you have one of these government-wide access contracts, they can get to you through that, or you actually have won a proposal, request for proposal, and it's going to work to you. So those are the methods that they can use to get to them.
You mentioned vendor outreach day in Washington. How do you know when that is?
So every agency has their own, and it happens multiple times throughout the year. And so if you go out to a government website, any government agency website, and you look up small business office, whatever they call it for that particular agency, those results will come up, and then just look at the list of events. And it could be things like how to sell to Department of Justice. And when you go, they have people that just walk you through Department of Justice's process, and they'll tell you about upcoming opportunities. Or it could be something like, there's a brand new regulation for TARA. We're going to teach you about FATARA. And so if you want to know, if you sell information technology, because that's what FATARA is about, you would go to that one. And a lot of times they really are trying to make them more available through webinars so that people from everywhere can access them.
On that as well, we were at one at the Department of Labor, and by just standing in line waiting to talk to, in this case, a contracting officer, the conversation blossomed and we've done some work with them. They had already been working in the Department of Labor, we haven't. We had not, so it was nice in that even though in the end we went and we heard what they were doing, contracting officers do they care or not? Some would care a little more than others, but what came out of it was this relationship with someone who's already working in there and does something slightly different than what we do to be able to work with them. So I like it because you do meet folks who have already in place the mechanisms on how to reach you. So you're dealing with people who may have a contract with labor that can do a variety of things, but they're only going after 3 of those things. When you do something slightly different, that now you could be their partner. So I think it's helpful for not only meeting the contracting people, but just the other folks in the industry.
Definitely. Which is the same is true for like National Contract Management Association. I used to be on the board of directors for them, and they have chapters all over the country, but a lot of contracting officers go to those meetings because it's their professional association, so you meet people through just normal conversations that you have the opportunity to market to. GSA also puts a lot of information. They have a vendor website and just some really good overview documents of how to best work with the government, whether or not you should get a GSA schedule, like whether it's in your best interest to do it. They've really tried hard to reach out to small businesses. Now, I will caveat all this by truthfully saying to you, some of these small business offices are inundated with small businesses. And really what you're hoping is that someone has expressed a particular need for your product or service recently, that they will now take you back to that program manager and put your name for it. So some of it's catch as catch can. But if you meet these contracting officers, usually the contracting officers are really busy. If you meet the coolers and just kind of hear about when things are popping, that's useful. Your ideal situation is if you get a contract, because then your people are on the ground there and can hear about other opportunities. Any other questions? Okay, so let's talk about what the plan is for tomorrow. What we're going to do tomorrow is we're going to start talking about the NAICS codes. I'm going to give you the process for identifying the NAICS codes for your particular products and service lines. You need to think about, so for purposes of this class, so that we don't get too bogged down in details, just pick 3, like the top 3 that you see yourself selling to the federal government. And once we identify those 3 NAICS codes, we're going to look at all the small business requirements and figure out if we're small or large businesses within each of those NAICS codes. And then armed with that information, we'll be able to go out to FedBizOps on Wednesday and figure out what are like 3 RFPs that we can look at for each of the areas that we're pursuing. Because that'll give us a sense of, is our product where it needs to be right this second, or there's some things that we can do to make it more compliant, or is this something we don't want to sell to the government because we're not even close? And so we can start making those decisions. Tomorrow we'll also start the contractor process, and we'll go through it just like we did the federal process today, so that you have a sense of what you would need to do to be able to be compliant. Does that make sense? Okay. Well, then I'll see you tomorrow morning. We'll start at 9 o'clock and we'll pick up from there. Was today okay? Thumbs up, thumbs down? Am I good?